Welcome to Survive and Thrive, a COVID response coaching program for dog trainers. On behalf of the Dog Biz team, I want to thank you for joining us today, for being a part of this program. There has never been a more important time for us to come together as a community than right now. We need to protect our industry and our businesses so that we can be here for our clients long after this crisis is over. So thank you for your commitment, both to your current clients and to the clients of the future. Before we get started today, I thought it would be helpful to introduce us because I don't think we know everyone. We know a lot of you, but not everyone. So I want to go ahead and introduce the team. And first up is our fearless leader and Dog Biz founder, Veronica Bautel. I've been joking today that on a webinar yesterday, someone said that Veronica's voice was so calming, and it is, but I think that you'll find that it's not just her voice, but what she has to say that really will help you to feel more hopeful about getting through this crisis. So welcome, Veronica. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
Next, we have Tia Guest, business consultant extraordinaire. Although some of you already know that because you've been working with her one-on-one. If you have ever felt like your business is out of control and needed a little organization, you need Tia. You won't see her on camera a lot today or hear her voice a lot because she is running things today. She's keeping everything running in the background and also answering your questions and starting discussions in the chat pod. So if you haven't found that chat pod, wander over there and say hello to her. I'm Gina Ferris. I have the pleasure of working with this great team every day and of consulting with a lot of you. So it is a pleasure for us just to be here with you today. I want to start by telling you a little bit about this program. Nearly 20 years ago, Dog Biz had a different name and a different look. Some of you may remember that, but our mission today remains the same as it was then, and that is to help dog pros succeed. We started this company because we saw so many great dog trainers leaving the industry because they couldn't make a living doing what they love to do, and we thought we could help. And today's challenges are a little bit different, but we are once again facing the loss of too many dog pros, not because they don't love training dogs, but because this crisis is making it really difficult to remain in business. So Veronica and I and the Dog Biz team really wanted to find a way to help. And that is how Survive and Thrive was born. So our goal with this program is to help you not just survive this crisis, but also to come through it stronger. And we really believe that we can do that together with our colleagues, that if we aren't in this alone, if we really believe that if we work together, we help each other out, that we will all survive this and even have the ability of having stronger businesses when it's all over. So that's the goal. That's why we're here. Just a reminder that we will be meeting weekly on Tuesdays. However, this week and next week, we've thrown in a couple of extra sessions on Thursdays just so that we can get kind of jump started and get a move on. So it's an 8-session program that lasts for 6 weeks. We will do deep dives into lots of topics like marketing and pricing and how to offer virtual services. Some of the sessions will apply to you and some might not. So for instance, we may announce that we're going to be talking about doing virtual classes and maybe you don't plan to offer those. Know that you can come in and out of these sessions as makes sense for you and for your business. And if at any time you're not able to attend live, but you still wanted to see a session, know that you will be able to find the recordings on our Dog Biz YouTube channel. So even if you can't attend live, you'll have a chance to access the information. Each session will begin with a short presentation and you'll get a taste of that today. That's when Veronica and I will offer you some of our sage advice and some tips on the topic, but then we're going to quickly follow that with a discussion from you because you have some great ideas All of this is new for everyone, and some of you are trying some things that are just working really well. We want you to have a chance to share that with each other. And then we'll end the session just by checking in on the topics or questions, the concerns that you have, in particular those ones that are top of mind, the things that are most pressing, so that we can address those, as quickly as possible in upcoming sessions. CEUs have been approved by CPDT. We are waiting to hear back from KPA and PPG, but we expect to have some good information from them for you shortly. The good news is
they've been approved by IAABC too.
Oh, sorry, IABC. Okay. The good news is you don't have to do anything right now. What we'll do is we will give you secret words but at the beginning and the end of each of these sessions. Just hang on to those, write those down, put them in a safe place. I joked that we're going to do the same thing so we don't forget what they were. And then at the end of the course, at the end of the 6 weeks, we'll stop and give you some information about how to apply and get those CEUs, and we'll help you out with that. But you don't have to do anything right now. But so I don't forget, let me go ahead and give you that secret word. And the secret word for today is challenge. Okay, challenge. Another housekeeping item, we are working really hard to create a safe space for you here. We hope that you feel a really supportive environment. In order to create that, though, we're going to need your help. So remember that we are here to support and encourage each other. This is a stressful time. We will disagree, no doubt, but let's remember to just give each other feedback in the same spirit that we give our dogs feedback when we're training them. So let's treat each other with that same respect that we treat dogs with, and I think we'll create an environment where everyone feels safe and supported. As I said, we will be offering some of our best tips and advice at the beginning of each of these sessions, but because we're learning as we go, we're going to hit some glitches along the way. We also, though, want to encourage you, again, use that chat pod to share what you're learning, what's working, what's not working for you, so that you can really be a part of this conversation. That's really important to us. You can ask your questions there as well. And again, Tia will be watching out for those. She may answer those right away, or she may hold some questions that are coming through that all have a common thread, so that we can discuss those at the end as well. So that was all for my housekeeping. I think Veronica has a few things for you, so I'll let her.
So just one thing. So as Gina said, we are going to, as we proceed through the program, we'll be sort of doing a focused deep dive into a specific topic each session. That's sort of the plan at this point. But today, what we're going to do is really spend some time laying some foundational context for us all to work together. So essentially a backdrop for the more detailed work that we're going to do in subsequent sessions. And so that's really the focus of today, is just to kind of get us in the mindset to do this work and have this shared foundation as we move forward. So that's what we'll be focusing on today.
Let's go ahead and jump right in then. This is no doubt a challenging time for all of us. We absolutely understand that. But today we also want to talk about how this is a time for opportunity. Really stop and think, when was the last time you took a step back from your business and you really thought about your larger business goals? When was the last time you thought about, what services do I want to be offering? Do I even like what I'm doing right now? We don't often get that opportunity because we're so busy with the day-to-day. So this crisis has really given us a reason to hit pause and check in on our business goals, and maybe even to establish some new habits of doing that on a more regular basis. At Dog Biz, we really understand that if, as dog pros, we are good about pursuing these opportunities, if we can spot them and take advantage of them, we're going to be able to set our businesses and our clients up for success once this crisis is over. So in order to have that success, though, we wouldn't be Dog Biz if we didn't start by talking about our goals.
So, as with any endeavor, to be successful, it makes sense that you don't start until you know where you're looking to go, right? We want to understand the goals that we're working toward to give ourselves the best chance of reaching them. And if you think about it from a dog trainer's perspective, it's sort of the same thing, right? As professional dog trainers, we don't generally jump in and start working with the dog before we put a training plan together. And we all know from the occasional moments that we do jump in without a training plan that it doesn't usually go quite as well. We don't always end up where we mean to go, especially if we're not even sure where we mean to go. Sometimes end up down paths we didn't mean to take, and our results are not usually as strong. So in the spirit of being good dog trainers, we wanted to share up front with you what our goals for this program are. And these are the goals that we're keeping in mind as we do the planning and behind the scenes work. These are also the goals we want you to keep in mind as you're making decisions and doing this work throughout this period on your own business as well. The first one is the obvious one. It's the one that feels the most pressing for most of you, which is just surviving this, right? It's just getting the business through this period. Now that you can't do the things that you've normally done, what can we do to get revenue streaming again so that you're able to get your business through this crisis? But we don't want you to stop here. This is too limiting a goal. This is a really important one, but we want to balance it with the big picture too. And that is seeing you move through this to where you're thriving on the other side as well. And so that's why we called this program Survive and Thrive. We want to survive this crisis, but we want to emerge from it even stronger than we went in. And so that's something that we'll really be focusing on throughout the program as well, and that we urge you to keep in mind too as you make decisions about what you want to do to get through this specific period. Now, these are really important goals, but I think we'd all agree that the reason that we do this is the mission and the passion, right? I know that from knowing so many of you, I know you're here partly to survive financially, but I also know that that's not enough for you, right? That you don't do this just to make a living. You do this because you genuinely care about dogs and their people, about serving them, about making their lives better and better together. And so that's something that we also want to keep forefront throughout all of this work that we do together, that ultimately we still have the original mission that we set out with. And so these are the things we're going to be using to guide the work we do, and they're the goals that we really urge you to keep right in front of you at all times as you step through this process.
And while we want you to keep these goals in mind, it's also really important to take a breath. Let's just all slow down for just a moment. I think about Bob Bailey and a piece of training advice that he frequently gives that I think is good for training. It's good for businesses. It's just a good life meme, which is give yourself time to think, then plan, and then do. When we're in a time of crisis, some of us, our reaction to that is to rush, to be very reactive to everything. And if we do that, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to make important business mistakes. So I really encourage us to instead proceed deliberately. Let's think about those business pitfalls that we have learned to sidestep from the past, make sure we're not repeating them, and also watch out for pitfalls that might be popping up now in these new times. There are a lot of common business mistakes made in our industry, and we just want to be careful that we're not replicating them. And again, just look ahead to avoid new ones that might pop up. Let's not make those same mistakes that we've made in the past this time. Let's be a little smarter as we head into things. And along with that, in our rush to find ways to serve clients, because of course we're all needing to get revenue coming in, let's be careful not to think that we can take our services that we used to do in person and automatically take them over to a virtual platform and expect those apples to automatically turn into oranges. let's understand that a translation is going to need to take place, because if we don't understand that, we're going to be frustrated with this new way of doing business. And not only will we be frustrated, but probably we're going to make some business decisions that aren't wise. We're going to make pricing decisions that maybe weren't the best pricing decisions, or packaging decisions that weren't wise. Or we're going to make teaching decisions that mean the outcomes for our clients and students aren't what they could be. We really have to understand that this is a different format, and it is forcing us to rethink how we do what we do. It's not going to be a direct translation if we want it to be effective. So we're going to have to do some work around the curriculum in our classes and in our private training that we're doing virtually. We do need to set up successful business models, of course, but we also want to make sure that we're setting our clients up for success, because while we need to be able to pay their rent, if we want to keep clients coming back, then they have to be successful in this new way of training. And one of the things that I just wanted to address right off the bat, because I'm seeing this kind of as a trend, which is we spent a long time talking about the importance of packaging our services, of making sure that we are selling enough training for clients to see the success that they're looking for. And what I've noticed as we're moving over to this virtual world is that we're tending to drop the use of packages. And I just want to step back for a minute and think about that. Let's remind ourselves why we use packages in the first place. Like I said, packages are about helping make sure that people have enough time, enough training time to get the job done. And we ask people to make that commitment for a couple of reasons, because otherwise they tend to quit too soon. And they quit for one of two reasons. They quit because either we do a really good job and they see a lot of success up front, and they quit before we have time to proof or generalize the behaviors, and it falls apart later, right? Which is not fun for them, and it's not fun for us as trainers. Not very satisfying. The other reason people often quit early is because we're working cases, possibly fear or aggression cases, where sometimes that learning curve is kind of flat at the beginning. It takes a while to get a foothold, and they just feel like it's not working. And so they quit before you have a chance to really help them. When we sell training, we don't sell enough training to get the job done, it hurts everyone. Think of it from the dog's perspective. The dog doesn't get the training they need, and then we run the risk of them getting blamed for being a bad dog, right? Well, I tried training and it didn't work. When really, you tried one session and it didn't work, and we weren't finished. So it's not good for dogs. It's not good for the clients, because they're not getting what they were hoping for. They're not seeing the results or the behavior change that they wanted. And it's not good for our businesses, for us to constantly feel like we're not getting to complete our work. So just because we've moved over to this virtual platform doesn't mean that we don't need clients to be committed. Right? It's still important, and going forward in this new format, it's even more important that we have the time that we need with clients. That time may look different, and we're going to talk about that, but we still need to make sure that we're getting enough time with our clients, that they're going to see positive results. So again, they spread the word to others about how happy they are with the training and how successful they were. It's important for our businesses, it's important for our clients, and it's important for dogs as well.
And if you have spent any time with us at all, working with us individually, or hearing us speak, or reading any of the things that we've written, you know that we talk a lot about the dangers of undervaluing training services, and that this is something that is all too common in our industry, even at a good time. And now, with the additional fear that that we're all living under about the economy and this sort of thing, we're seeing this start to really run rampant again. And this carries a real risk. And I really want to stop and explore this for a moment. It carries several risks. I mean, one, if you think about that first goal that we've laid out, which is getting you through this crisis, if you aren't charging well for your services, you make it a lot harder to survive the crisis financially. So there's that risk right there. Just simply, can we generate enough revenue if we're underpricing virtual services or anything else that you do? But focusing on virtual services for a moment, there are two related, very important risks of undervaluing these. One right now, one of the things that we're hearing from you a lot is the challenge of getting clients to try virtual services, of getting them to understand the value of them. When we price them too low, we are essentially saying to people that it is not as good. We are telling people it doesn't work as well as it does in person. We are feeding into that fear that we have that people are going to perceive it, and we are feeding into them perceiving it that way. And then you think about the second goal that we have of emerging out of this stronger than ever. Some of you, as soon as you can, you are going to go right back to in-person services. Some of you may find through this that you prefer doing this work virtually, and you may make a long-term pivot. Some of you may end up doing some mix of both. But if we undervalue it now, we make it really hard to emerge out of this with it priced well enough to carry you into the future as well. And so just keeping all of those things in mind, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this too. But that does not mean that you can't serve your community. A lot of you have talked about really wanting to help as many people during this time as possible, which we commend and support, and we want to see dog trainers do that even when there's not a pandemic, right? We've always talked about the importance of an approach to marketing that is about content sharing, community marketing, marketing as education, where you have opportunities, create opportunities to share your expertise and your knowledge with people. You can still do that right now. The importance, though, is not mistaking that for your actual services. There needs to be a distinction between the content that you share freely among all dog lovers in your community and the services that you charge for, just as there always have been. So just as a simple example to illustrate the point, you may decide that you are going to offer a free web seminar on puppy socialization during the pandemic, but you use that free web seminar to promote your paid virtual puppy classes. So you see, there's just a difference there. You're serving, but then you also have services that you provide, and those you need to be paid for. Or you may offer free video tips that are that carry real valuable content, and then also serve to promote your classes or your private training, etc. So we just want you to remember, you can help a large volume of people with good free content, but you should still be charging for your paid services.
And now I want to talk a little bit about some limiting beliefs that can cause us to make poor business decisions. These assumptions that we make that cause us to sometimes not operate in the best interest of our businesses. And we've taken some of these from some of the surveys that we've done with you, some from the conversation that we've already had over on the Facebook group, some that we're just hearing through our consulting. And there are just a few that are common out there that we want to address right away. And the first is that you can't market or sell right now without looking bad. And I think that this assumption came about probably because we're spending more time consuming media right now. And so you are probably seeing some companies who are getting it right, but I suspect that you're seeing a lot of companies who aren't. The companies whose marketing just seems kind of tone deaf, like they don't even know what's happening. They're not in touch with their clients. And if you've been on the receiving end of that, you know how uncomfortable and how that can turn you off. I just want to say that it doesn't mean that you can't market right now. It means that you have to market well, which is always the case. But now our marketing messages may change a bit. We'll talk about this as we talk about marketing throughout this course. But just kind of as a preview, we're going to look at messages that talk about support, being here for you, being in this together, ways of showing that our companies care as opposed to just pushing specific services. And again, we'll look at some specific examples as the course goes on, but understand it is not only okay to market right now, it's really important. In this time where we have trouble even keeping information in our head because we are in crisis mode, we're not taking in information really easily, it is important that you market and that you market frequently and you stay out there, because as people start to need our help, and I think that's going to be more and more as people spend more time locked in their house with their dogs for longer periods of time, and as their dogs stay locked in the house with their humans for longer than they're used to, the need for our services is going to grow. And so we need to make sure that we are continuing to let people know that we're there for them. So it's really important. And that speaks to that second assumption about people not needing or caring for training right now. Depending on where your community is at in this crisis, in the beginning, what we saw is people wanting to put things on hold. Everything felt very up in the air. They didn't have a routine down yet. So if you're new to kind of stay-at-home orders, that might be where your clients are now. But those of you who've been under these orders for weeks, you're starting to see clientele, again, who are starting behavior problems that are starting to pop up, people who have gotten into a new rhythm, a new routine. They've got their kids, back in classes online, and they are ready to address some of these challenges. I think we're going to continue again to see that need arise. And the third assumption here is just this idea that there's more competition in the dog training world because we're doing this online. And I just want to say, there hasn't been a huge influx in dog trainers since this crisis started. There's still the same numbers of us, correct? But because we're all online together, it feels, I think, like we're competing with one another. And I just want to say that for most of you, that local marketing that you're doing, as you market your online services, you're going to continue to build on that. Your reach will hopefully be a little wider, but you're still not probably going to spend a lot of time and money trying to market all the way across the country, because when you see those few large companies who are able to do that, if you really look behind the scenes, those are companies that have large budgets, large advertising budgets, and the ability to do that. Very few of us are going to be in that category. Most of us are going to be focusing where we've always focused, on the clients that are in or close to our areas, or clients that fill or meet specific niches that we have. So don't feel like you have to compete with every dog trainer out there. It was never the case before, and it's not the case just because you're taking things virtually. And then there are some money assumptions that we make. And one that I have heard really frequently is that people won't pay for training right now because nobody has any money. And I think let's just step back from that for a second and let's examine the truth of that statement. For our industry, it feels like no one has any money because we don't, right? We have been disproportionately affected by this crisis. Our businesses have. And so it feels like no one has any money because we're under tremendous pressure. When we look at the actual statistics, they aren't good. I don't want to give that impression. But in the United States, we're pushing 15% unemployment. And that is historically high. But let's look at the flip side of that coin. That means 85% of the population is still employed, is still making their paycheck. So there is a certain percentage of our population that cannot afford our services right now. That is always true. There is a certain percentage of our population who can, and that's still true today. There's this idea, I think, too, because of, again, we're all a little more money conscious right now, that people won't pay for services because we're offering them online. And it's interesting because we've been working with some of you who've been doing virtual services or online services for quite some time. and this hasn't been an issue before. So I don't think that it's going to be an issue now with many of your clients. Now, some of you are experiencing some challenges getting people to try online services, and I think in our discussion we'll probably get to talking about that. But just know that there are people out there who are willing, because it's not about how the service is delivered. What it means is educating the public that we can still help them. They may not understand that we can dog train virtually. It isn't very intuitive if you think about it. So this is about teaching our audience that we are still here, that we can actually help them. And then I think this will become less of an issue. And then finally, the third one, which is my favorite, that people will choose the cheap or the free option because this seems to make so much sense. But I just want to say, there were always do-it-yourselfers. Even before the crisis, there were people who would learn how to train their dogs from reading books, and then they learned from YouTube. There are always people who will do DIY it. They'll do it themselves. That's okay. They've always been there. But the vast majority of our clients are people who want their hand held. They want someone they can ask questions of. They want some direction. They don't want to have to become a dog trainer in their part-time. They just want someone to give them direction and show them or tell them how to do things. And those people aren't looking for cheap or free. They're looking for a good quality trainer. And you're still that. You're still there offering those great services. So we need to help them with that. So those were the assumptions that I wanted to make sure we took a look at. But I know Veronica has a few of her own, so I'll let her go through a few more with you.
Yeah, so I spent a couple of hours on Sunday reading through every single survey response. And I want to thank all of you who responded to questionnaire, really more than survey, the questionnaire that we sent out to help us get a sense of who you all are and what you need. It's been tremendously helpful in helping us to prep for you. I spent a couple of hours reading through those, and it was really interesting sort of looking at the trends that emerged. And one of them, I wanted to talk about a few of them here. A lot of them are around sort of this notion that certain things just aren't going to work, that they can't be done. And the first one that I saw quite a bit was that a belief that or limiting belief that you can't train a dog without being in person with the dog. I think it's true that most of us haven't done it that way. It's not typically how most trainers operate, but it's simply not true that it can't be done. There are trainers all around the world who have been training this way for a long time, and very successfully. You think about Milena Di Martini Price, for example, who has built a huge business on working separation anxiety all around the world with clients that she's never met in person. And the last hour, Arit Bloom was on and was sharing her experiences. She's been working with aggression cases virtually for a very long time. We know a lot of trainers doing all sorts of things virtually. So it really is possible. It may feel a bit uncomfortable at the beginning because it's something that we're not used to, but it is something that can be done. And also this notion that there are just some things that just aren't going to work online, that you just can't do online. And I just want to stop and suggest to think about how much is possible once we step outside the box and shake loose from what we're used to doing, the way things have always been done. I think that we may find that there are pros and cons. I think we are going to find, we're definitely going to find that there are pros and cons to everything, right? And that there are going to be some things that feel limiting in this context, and there are going to be some things that feel freeing. We're going to find that that there are some things we prefer to do or that we feel we can do better in person. And I think we're also going to be surprised by the things that we find that we can do better online. The ultimate thing here is that if we set down the notion that it can't be done, it frees up the creativity to think about how it actually can be done and to do it well. And I think we're going to surprise ourselves individually and as an industry. And then another one I saw, and I really personally commiserate with this one, is the notion of I can't learn or I can't be good at the video work or the online teaching or the text stuff. Those of you who know me personally know that I am always the last person to adopt new tech stuff. I do not like the tech learning curve. I just like, oh, can we just leave things well enough alone? For many years, I resisted online teaching. I thought, no, it can't be done. We can't do it well this way. And yet here we are, and we are doing it well this way. And in fact, it is one of the leading growth industries in the world is online education. There are pros and cons. There are things that I think are never going to be quite the same as in-person education. And I think that there are things that it allows us to do that we could never do in person. And also just to say that that you can, to be kind to yourself and recognize that that you really, you probably can do a lot more than you think you can do. And it's hard because this is not a time that any of us feel like being on a big learning curve. We're stressed and we're exhausted and we're uncertain. And this is not the best time to suddenly be thrown into having to pivot and learn something new. But as Gina says too, there's also so much opportunity in this too. And so just, to recognize that if we set down the feelings that we just can't do something, that it's amazing what we can accomplish. And one last thing here that really came up for me in a powerful way as I read through your questionnaire responses. This is a really challenging time to be making big decisions. It's a challenging time to be learning new things. It's a challenging time to be launching new services and all of these sorts of things. We're all suffering from some level of pandemic brain fog, anxiety. There's so much uncertainty, not knowing how long this is going to last, what it's all going to end up looking like. There's just so much going on here. And I think that one of the things that's really triggering for people is the fear of not being perfect, of not polishing things. Most of us as positive reinforcement dog trainers, we tend to be pretty deliberate. We tend to work on a plan. We like to have all our ducks in a row before we start something. Here at Dog Biz, normally something like this, we would have spent months planning a program like this out, not a couple of weeks, right? We're used to doing things in a really careful, deliberate way. And I just want to encourage you to remember that it is okay to experiment. It is okay to be creative, to adjust along the way. You don't have to be perfect or polished when you step into this. This is a time that just doesn't give us the luxury for this. This is a time that demands bold action, that demands us to step forward perhaps before we're quite ready. And one thing I think that I know has really given us the courage to do that and given us the impetus and the motivation to do that is this opportunity to serve. And so I want you to keep that third goal in front of you when you start feeling like I can't, when you start feeling paralyzed, when you start feeling overwhelmed and fearful. Remember that the dogs and the people, they still need you. They don't need you to be perfect. They just need you to be there. They need to have access to your expertise and your support and what you know. You can absolutely do this, particularly if you're kind to yourself and let yourself off the hook from it being perfect or polished. As we go forward together over these 6 weeks, we're doing the same thing. We're experimenting and we're trying things out, and we will probably make adjustments along the way to get better at what we're doing. I love what Tia just done is better than perfect. That's such a perfect way of putting this. So just be kind to yourself and let go and just take a step.
Yeah, and Joyce makes a good point about how right now everyone is kind of in this forgiving of mistakes mood. Adjust to the new normal, and I think that's true. And a big thank you to Brian for putting in the chat that he tried using YouTube video on a live virtual class, and to him it felt like a train wreck, and his class thought it was wonderful. Know that it always feels worse to you than it does to them. That I think that's a feeling we will probably all all have at some point or another. But hang in there. We hopefully will give you some tips and things to make it feel better and go smoother, but also know that even when it's not perfect, you've offered people some relief, and to them, that's wonderful. So it doesn't have to be perfect to be helpful either. One other thing I wanted to say as we kind of think about like mindset as we go forward through the course is that when you start to find yourself saying, I can't, or I don't see how to do something, stop and check if the problem is really that you're trying to do it the same way you've always done it. I think that's where we get stuck, right? Because we can't do it the same way, then it must not be possible. And again, we are in a time of opportunity. This is an opportunity to figure out new ways of doing things. Whether I've brought this up a couple of times because it came up in the chat or in the Facebook group, and I literally slapped my hand to my head because I was like, oh yes, of course, because I keep getting questions from people who don't have a demo dog. Some of you are like, how do I show a demonstration? My dogs are all perfectly trained. I can't relate to you at all because I don't know what that's like, but some of you have perfectly trained dogs and you're having trouble demoing, or you don't have a dog at the moment, or what have you. And it just felt like, gosh, what would they do if you don't have a dog? And then of course you may not have a personal dog that you can demo with, but you have clients who have dogs, who have cameras in their pocket, in their phone. You have colleagues who will probably help you out with a quick video if you needed it. We can share with each other. And so and I think someone in the last group mentioned a lot of shelters need people to foster. Some of you might be in a position of fostering a shelter dog who could prove to be your demo dog through this time. And there are lots of other creative ways too, but just to say that when we get stuck in the rut of only looking at it from the same angle that we always have, that it's hard to see the opportunity and it's hard to see the way forward. If we can just step back and look at it from a new direction, sometimes some really great solutions present themselves.
Yeah. And I love, as you're talking, Gina, I was just looking through the chat at all of the amazing things people have been doing in that experience that they've had, that Kim was saying she was scared to death to start uploading the videos, and the clients are loving it. And Nisa's been going on Facebook every day, and it's not been perfect, but it's, engaging people and serving the purpose. And I'm not quite sure what Vivi maybe has been doing Zoom sessions with a client and a reactive dog, and the client's actually saying that they prefer it this way. So it's just, that's the thing. There really are so many wins to be had in this. Yeah, and I think that message of stepping back and not thinking about how do I do this the same way, but how could this be otherwise? How could it look differently?
And look for opportunities. I think this is such a fun, in some ways, a fun time for dogs, right? They must be like, this is wonderful. My humans are home more. They're getting walked more by their humans, as is evidenced by just walking out your neighborhood. Some of you've probably noticed people in your neighborhood you didn't know lived there. It's a time to help people reset their expectations of their dog, to reset routines with their dog. I joke a lot about, I so want right now to do a virtual class for all of those dogs that had to drop, all the class dropouts, the ones that were so reactive they couldn't come to class, but maybe now they can. Like if we just can, again, if we can stay focused on the opportunities, I think it will help give us some hope and some energy to take into this new time.
Yeah. So what we'd like to do as part of this sort of foundational work that we're doing together today is just to ask you to open up in the chat about which of these or other limiting beliefs that you find yourself operating under. And for those of you who have already started to take action, because that's something that we've also noticed both here in the chat and in the Facebook group and in the questionnaire, there are a lot of you who have already just jumped in with both feet very boldly, which is just amazing. But as we move forward through all of this, we're going to want to periodically stop and take stock and make assessments and decide what needs adjusting. And so this is a really great moment to do that. Are there decisions you've already made that have been based on some of these limiting beliefs that we might want to revisit as we move forward and do our work together? So we just love to have you share a little bit on these questions here.
Matt says just that fear of not being perfect from the outset, that concern. And again, Matt, I think so many of us share that, and that's a tough one to set down. But I think the more that you do, the more you'll see that it's okay. It's okay if it's not perfect.
Yeah, I love what Kate says about just leaning into it not being perfect. No, it's really true. And show your clients that you're fallible. I mean, again, as so many of you have already shared, they're not going to think it's the disaster you are anyway. They're always going to see it better. You know, we're always our worst critics to begin with. But that, yeah, also, you know, I think that so much of the messaging right now is that we are all in this together, and that is part of it, right? Is you know, going on this journey with your clients. It's part of being there for them, and I think that people get that right now.
Okay, so I've had a few people message me privately and just say, I don't like myself on camera. And I realized I didn't have my camera on, so I can still relate. I'm with you.
Do you want to tattle on me about that, Gina?
Yeah. Do you know how hard it is to get Veronica on camera? You are not alone here. This is tough for everyone. And as a former broadcast major, I can tell you the only way it gets easier is to just do it. Is to do it until you get used to seeing yourself over and over. And then the other thing is sometimes I take a break and I turn it off and I just let you look at my picture when I need a minute to compose myself, and I'm not afraid to do that. So know that if you're uncomfortable, it won't always be that way, but this is just one of those things that the only way to get through it and get over it is to do it. That's the only big tip I think I have for that. So
yeah, and also, yeah. So I agree. Doing it more is definitely helpful. I can say, you know, it's funny. I can stand up in front of an audience like sold out Madison Square Garden. I don't have a single butterfly in my stomach, but man, turn a video camera on me and I can't remember my first name, and I've just had to keep doing it until it gets a little bit easier and a little bit easier, you know. And we're all going to face those things down, you know, during this sort of thing. And I think also just not sweating the small stuff. Jenny mentions in the chat pod that she's been, you know, struggling with making an attractive backdrop for her videos. And I would just remind you, I mean, like, yeah, you know, get the laundry basket out of the out of the picture and that sort of thing. But the thing is, people are there for you and the content. They're there for the support. They're there for the relationship and the connection to you. The backdrop doesn't matter as much, right? I mean, we're not in professional video. We're in professional dog training. Your videos for serving your clients and your local community, they don't have to be polished that way. They don't have to be beautiful. Just, you know, make sure that just put the laundry basket away. But other than that, you just go for it.
Yeah, I used to always tell people, you know, keep it as simple as possible. If you've got a blank wall, that's fine. But I will say, after so many of us doing so many Zoom calls, I think, I was just laughing because my husband yesterday was on a Zoom call with like all of the city council members, and our daughter comes running through the back, and they just laugh because that's the reality that we all live in right now. So expectations are low in that. So don't let that hinder you. We've gotten some questions. There's one that I've seen come up several times that I just kind of want to address, because I kind of feel like, well, we put you in the spot, so we should at least address it briefly. And then
I'm guessing day draining.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had the note too. Gracie and Tara and Issa and Bethany, yeah, quite a few people had mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we told you to use your marketing, to change your marketing, to do day training and take over the work for them, and you did a beautiful job. And then COVID hit, and now you've convinced your people that it's better for you to train the dog, and so you're finding some marketing challenges there. So a couple of things come to mind. One is that some of that marketing message was probably around them being busy and not having time to do the training. And so the fact that they are at home, and many people, not everyone, some of us are busier than ever, but many people have more time. So they can take on the training. You also might look at tailoring services. So maybe you don't do hour-long sessions, maybe you do shorter sessions, etc. But just, kind of breaking down what was the piece of that marketing message that really resonated with them, and what can you carry forward. Veronica, you might have some ideas about that too.
Yeah, I think there are some really interesting bits, and we'll delve into some of this in more detail when we focus in on private training consults in a more in-depth way. But if you think about the whole notion of day training, the part that we can't really do is the part where we're actually doing the training ourselves. And that's a shame, because we know how powerful that is. But if you think about some of what it was really about, it was about providing more regular support, right? It was about getting in there and supporting and doing as much for them as we could. So I think that some of the ways that we might take some of the advantages of day training into virtual training, one is thinking about not making the mistake of sliding back into the old model where we only see the client once a week, right? In day training, we were seeing the client once a week, but we were also doing the training several times as well. And so thinking about what might it look like to have more touch points with the client throughout the week so that they're feeling really actively supported. I think we can probably take some interesting ideas from people like Melina DiMartini, for example, and the way that she does separation anxiety work. One of the support pieces she uses for her SEPANGS clients is she has an online shared document where she goes in each day and gives clients just specific step-by-step instructions, not the big, long, lengthy instructions that we as talk trainers tend to give people, but just explicit, do these 5 things today, right? It just like this action, then take this action, then take this action. And then the clients do it and they get back on and they say, okay, here's what happened. Here's how it went. And then she's able to say, okay, based on that, here's what you're going to do today. And have those sorts of touch point pieces. And then I think there's also going to be opportunity, and again, we'll talk about this in more detail in a subsequent session, but there's going to be opportunity as well to think about different session lengths, right? That maybe, we've always done an hour because it just didn't feel worthwhile from a business perspective to drive somewhere and only be there for half an hour, but we aren't tied to that anymore. We might be thinking differently about shorter but more frequent sessions, for example. There are a lot of things. Again, it's that whole bit about stepping outside the box, about not trying to force, apples into oranges, right? We have to actually translate them. We don't say, this is how we've always done it. How are we going to do it now in this new context? We say, what are the goals of this? What are we trying to achieve, right? We're trying to achieve a higher level of support, making things easier for people. We can't do it for them, but how do we break it down into smaller, easier chunks? What would that look like? Just moving away from what it's always looked like to imagine it otherwise. Oh, and I will say too, I think the marketing message stuff, it's hard because for you day trainers, you said, hey, let us do it for you, but you still have a lot of messaging you can do around support piece, around making it as easy as possible, around holding your hand every step of the way. I think there's still some messaging, and we're going to talk about marketing messaging quite a bit in subsequent session too, but I think there's still a lot you can do around that suits the day training message that you used to as well.
Okay, we're getting close to time, so I just want to make sure that everyone has a chance to, in the chat, to tell us a little bit again about what those most pressing immediate needs are. We're looking for trends so that we can set up our session for Thursday. And I have seen a lot of tech questions. So I've got that on our list. Not sure if that'll be Thursday's topic, but I have caught that's a concern. Again, we just want to know, what are the things that you need to know right now that just can't wait another week or two, so that we can make sure we cover as many of those as we can and get you set up in the coming weeks. Again, what are those immediate concerns? Great. You guys are doing a great job of throwing those in the chat pod. Appreciate that.
It's flying. I thought I was a fast reader.
I know. That's fantastic. Lots of common themes in there too. We certainly will get to marketing and pricing, but it looks like we've got some questions just about how to even the curriculum of virtual, like how long should these sessions be, and what do they look like? We will certainly get to that as well. Okay. All right, I'll just give you a minute to go ahead and do that. Veronica, while they're putting those in, I'm going to try to grab some of those. Let's also tell them about what's coming up.
Yeah, so a couple things. One, Jaborsha's just put in, although it's flying up already in the chat pod, just a reminder if you haven't already to join the Facebook group, because that's a great way to keep this conversation going in between sessions. Also want to let you know you'll get an email tomorrow. That email will confirm times for the next session for Thursday. We'll let you know what the topic's going to be once you've had a chance to look through all of this and make that decision. We'll share the slides from today. We're going to try as much as possible to get out in front of that too, so that you've got slides ahead of time for those of you old-fashioned note takers out there. The link that you use for today is the same link that you'll use for all the sessions, but I'll include that in each of the emails too, just so you have quick, easy access to it. Before I forget, for your continuing education credits, your CEUs, you need the second secret word. Gina gave you the first one at the front. The second one for today is opportunity, because we think it's a really good word to wrap on. Remember, you don't have to do anything with those. Just keep your secret words in a safe place for now. We'll tell you when the course is over what to do with them to get those CEUs. We wanted to end on that word opportunity, just to say again that this is a challenging time. We'd all like to be able to snap our fingers and just put an end to this, but it's also an opportunity, a real opportunity too. It's a chance to. A lot of you talked in the chat about trying things you've never tried before and things that you've wanted to try. I think we have an opportunity to get really creative and come together as a community to explore new ways of serving dogs and their people. I think we're probably individually and as an industry going to get better at what we do as a result of this. And I just want to remind you, a couple of you have spoken in the chat pod today, and also, in the questionnaire about feeling paralyzed sometimes, and just how hard this is. And as I said earlier, what a challenging time to be making decisions and trying to be creative and get things done. And I just want to encourage you to be really kind to yourself. Everyone responds to stress differently. You're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days. Be kind to yourself on the bad days, and use the good ones. That's all we can really do. But I want to just make sure that we give you lots and lots of positive reinforcement just for being here, right? I mean, you could be holed up in your bedroom, rolled up into a fetal ball right now, but you're not. You're here. You're here to work on your own business, and you're here to be part of a community and to support each other and to share your great ideas. And to create new ones together. And most importantly, you're here to serve dogs and their people, which is what it's always all been about. So we're just so grateful that you're here doing this. And it is truly our just a humbling privilege for us to support you in any way that we can. So we're so glad you're here, and we're looking forward to next session on Thursday, and expect to get an email from us tomorrow with details for that. And in the meantime, please take really good care of yourselves and stay safe and well.